In this video, I'm going to show you how to take a drawing that you make and transfer it onto a piece of metal. In this case, we're going to be doing aluminum samples. And so once you are finished drawing your design, you're going to cut the piece of paper to the same size as the piece of aluminum, use one piece of tape, and then use a ballpoint pen to transfer the design onto the metal. After that, you will begin embossing the design.
This is a different sheet of metal, but this is very important information.
You're going to be using wood or plastic tools on the aluminum. Aluminum is not a good material. It's not good to use a metal tool on the aluminum, or you have to be very careful because it can very easily break. Okay, there's a couple things to think about when you're embossing. When you get to this point, you have outlined or copied most of the design onto the metal. And as you can see, I started to push out from the back. So any design that you want to become three-dimensional towards the front, you have to push from the back. So I'm doing these little spikes. I'm trying to get the spikes to look more pointy in the front. So some of them look better. Some of them, like I pushed out too much right there. So there's a tendency, I think, that people will go and like try to fix something real quick. Take your time. This is my recommendation. Take your time, because there's a lot of mistakes that can be fixed as you're working the metal. Always keep the cardboard underneath. I think you're going to find that if you get on a table or something, it's going to be too hard of a backing. So I think I'm going to go ahead and start to define this cylindrical form. And I am going to do the void here first. And push it out a little bit, and then I'm going to push it back in. Just trying to get a little rim there created. And, you know, it's a little different doing embossing than drawing because it's a little bit more, there's a physicality to it, a more three-dimensional aspect to it. See, I kind of messed up there. This flattening tool is a very nice tool. When you have an edge that you don't like, or you want to make a correction, it's a good tool to do that. So I think I'll do that. I'll take that down a little bit. It seems to me that I'm showing too much of that top of that cylinder. So even in my drawing, I don't like that so open. So I'm going to make it a little bit more shallow on the top. Okay. Now, I'm not going to have to push this whole cylinder out. I'm just going to push it out a little bit. So the way you do a line, I'm going to push from the back, and I'm going to push a little of this out. Okay, and then I'm going to flip it over, and after I flip it over, what I want to do is define your line. And a lot of times it's making the background flat, and the one thing it does kind of give a little bit of a bump to the metals, but if you just keep going over it, you can get it out of there. Okay, I don't like that spike, it's a little crooked. So now's the time to slow down. I think there's a tendency to go really fast, but I think you get really good if you slow it down and you really try to define things carefully, okay? So sometimes, you gotta be careful with this, is sometimes I take my finger and do a little of this, because your finger's soft and squishy and you can kind of just push out that whole area without getting too much of a tool mark. And that, oh yeah, that worked better. So you have to just try different things. There are some different tools in your kits, perhaps. Most of you have these three boxwood tools, and some of you have some other tools. You can, a ballpoint pen is nice. Anything plastic or wood tends to be nice on the aluminum. Aluminum is very easy to rip, so you don't want to push too hard. Okay, these little 10-second tools, they're plasticky. I think it's just a hard plastic they're made out of, and so that's nice to define something from the background there. So that's the type of idea. I'm going to go back on the time lapse. I'm going to work on this for a while, and what you're going to notice is I'm going to try to push from the back and then straighten out, smooth out, and flatten the front. So that's starting to create what you would see as a three-dimensional.
Okay, I'm now going to do a second aluminum sample, which I do recommend that you do is do several samples. Everything I said in the first part of this video applies to the second piece of metal that I'll be doing as a sample.
Okay, this is pretty good for a sample. Basically, I've gone in and I've created some three-dimensional areas. There's a lot more I can do with this, but I'm going to do a bunch of other samples. So I think for now, I'm going to make some decisions about color. I don't want to use too much color, honestly. Sometimes just black and silver looks really nice. If I put too many colors in, I always find that it looks messy. I also want some of the silver to be exposed and to be shown. So I think what I'm going to do, just to kind of give a little bit of definition, is to darken the interior area. And so that will create a little bit of definition. And the two silver areas will kind of show over one another. So there's obviously some areas that need a little bit more touch-up. And I think what I'll do is I'll get a fine tip Sharpie and come back and do some of those other areas. Okay, so I found a thin Sharpie, and you can see I'm coming in and doing highlights and going around some of the designs so you can see them a little better. You don't have to do that, but sometimes it provides definition. For the background, I'm going to do a different color. In fact, oftentimes I'll keep the object, the aluminum color, and then do the background a different color just to kind of make it stand out. The metal is shiny. The background, if it's a different color than the silver, will give it a lot of contrast. You can see you can do something like that. You can blend the Sharpies while they're still wet. So this is kind of a darker blue. So while the color's still wet, you could blend if you wanted to and create a mixture of colors. Some of the colors, it's weird because this is like a dark blue and it looks almost purple as it's on the metal. So that does happen sometimes. The black sometimes look a little bluish as well. So it just kind of depends on what you're doing. And like I say, these are practice samples, so the idea is just to experiment, try things out, see what you like, see what looks good. As you go through the practice, you'll get good at the embossing, you'll experiment some with the color, and then so when you do your final one, you'll have a good idea of what you want.